This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley in conversation with presidential candidate Jason Palmer, who will tell us why he thinks he'd be a better candidate, a better president for that matter, than Joe Biden. He's running as a Democrat. You recall on this program, we've had a number of these candidates on, and everybody's invited here to express themselves. And we've had conversations with Cornel West, of course, and there's been pushback against him because when he decided to run as an independent and not as a Democrat. And a lot of my friends, dear friends of mine, said to me, why won't he run on the inside and not the outside? His answer was, because if you're on the inside, you're going to get crushed. The party apparatus will just crush you. Well, that fear has not stopped Jason Palmer from running on the inside of the Democratic apparatus. First of all, nice to meet you. Good to have you on this program. Tell me why you're doing this.
Well, Tavis, thank you so much for having me. It's almost like a dream come true to be talking to you here in the studio.
Thank you, sir.
I'm doing this because back in September, October timeframe, I saw that the Republicans were having all their debates, and it was like a food fight. It was embarrassing for me as an American. And then I said, well, at least the Democrats are going to have some debates that'll talk about how we can work together as a country, move the country forward. And then I realized, no, there weren't going to be any debates. And in fact, nobody was even getting into the race. I thought that Gavin Newsom would get in the race. I thought that Gretchen Whitmer would get in the race. Somebody would get in the race. Biden had said he was going to be a transitional figure. And where was the transition? There was no person getting in the race. So I asked a number of my CEOs. I'm an impact investor, an entrepreneur. I've been working at the intersection of education and workforce technology for the last 20 years. Do you think someone like me should get in the race to kind of shake it up, create a conversation about a positive, optimistic vision for America where we can bring the American dream back? I mean, most of the kids that I know, young people, think they're going to do worse off than their parents, that the economy and the country are not going in the right direction. And enough of my CEOs came back and said, yeah, you absolutely should get in the race. This is exactly the kind of voice we need. It's exactly the kind of solutions-oriented approach. That's who I am. I'm a solutions-oriented person. You know, and then in the meantime, as your last caller was talking about, Biden is very wrong on a number of things. He's wrong on Gaza. He's wrong on immigration. He doesn't really have an innovation policy, and I hope we get to talk about AI and innovation because that's my strong suit. And, you know, we're the leader of the free world, but we're not taking care of our own. And so that's why I got in the race, to show how we can take care of our own and bring the country back together.
How do you think Joe Biden has done in the first 4 years? And I ask that because, to your point of his being a transitional figure, David Axelrod, who ran Obama's campaign, and others, Ezra Klein did it the other day at the New York Times. There are a lot of critical voices. I mean, these people, when these people talk, they're kind of like E.F. Hutton. Politically, people listen to them. You know, I don't always agree with David Axelrod, but because of who he is and what he's done, you pay attention to him. So when people like that start saying he needs to step aside, he has done what we elected him to do, but going another 4 years really ain't the answer to the prayer. So my question is, how do you think he did the first 4 years, and why do you think he ought to stop right now?
Well, I do want to say that Joe has been a great public servant for the last 50 years. I voted for him with honor the last time around, and he passed a number of bills related to infrastructure, Build Back Better. There was a number of things. It was not exactly Build Back Better, but close to that I felt like...
Build Back a little better. Just a little better. Yeah.
Exactly. But there were three big bipartisan bills that he passed that I felt pretty good about, the CHIPS Act being the third one. And, you know, he is good at passing legislation. But at this point, he really has steered his whole presidency towards foreign affairs. And history on this shows that the second administration of any president ends up almost always being focused on foreign affairs. We're entangled in multiple wars around the globe. Doesn't seem like Joe realizes we need to invest in the American people, and he needs to stop paying attention and spending all of his time on foreign affairs. And I hope we get into that as well. So I hope he, like Ezra Klein is, you know, talking about in his last two podcasts. I really love Ezra's podcast.
Sure.
Although I think it's 6 months too late. Ezra, where were you 6 months ago? You know, it is time for him to be like George Washington and say, I'm passing it on to the next generation. Unfortunately, the Democratic Convention is in August. That is very close to November. So I hope that Joe decides well before the convention that it's time to pass the torch.
Do you think, I'm glad you raised that. I was just in a meeting yesterday about my covering the convention from Chicago, so we're in the midst of planning for all of that. Do you think that the Democrats putting that convention so deep into August, was there a reason behind that?
I don't know for sure, but knowing what I've seen on the campaign trail with South Carolina moving first and with basically saying that New Hampshire is not going to count at all. And then there are a number of states like Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, where nobody else is on the ballot. I don't even think they're going to hold an election because they kept myself and other people off the ballot. I would not say it was rigged. They actually did it legally, but it was kind of just not the right way to approach democracy.
Not rigged, but unethical.
It was ethical, but it was, to be super honest about it, because I looked into it, like they have quarterly board meetings in Florida, and they set their board meeting for early October, and a number of us looked at the deadline and said, oh, well, the deadline's November 29th. We can still get in the Florida ballot. And they said, oh, but the quarterly board meeting already happened 6 weeks ago, so sorry, we already approved it 6 weeks ago.
And that's why they're...
It's not, I don't know if it's unethical. It's using process to achieve a single outcome. But all that said, it's not over. We've only had a few primaries at this point, and I'm hoping to get my message out there that there's a different way to go here. I am a candidate who is all about impact investing, conscious capitalism, and building a new collar economy. I come from a background with strength in technology. We have an AI revolution that's going on right now that could really make this a more equitable society, or it could just result in millions of lost jobs. And we need a president who actually understands technology and AI to lead us through this.
Tell me more about how you would innovate when it comes to technology, specifically AI.
Yeah, well, a couple different things. So first of all, it's amazing to me that we're in 2024 and we still don't have a Department of Innovation and Technology at the cabinet level. We should have that department. When people say, why aren't they doing more to regulate, children's safety or privacy or cybersecurity or AI? It's because we don't have an executive branch department whose job is to stay on top of that. Imagine if we had either a cabinet level department or an agency like the Federal Reserve whose whole job was to stay on top of that and make sure that America was the leader in regulating smartly these new technologies. Going even further, it usually takes, this is my area, it usually takes 40 years for something to get from the lab all the way to commercial scale and positive impact. That's a long time. We can accelerate that. When the genome was mapped back in the early 2000s, we thought, oh, we're going to have all this designer drugs, designer medicine. Well, 20-some years later, they're still not here. And why is that? It's because we don't have a Department of Innovation and Technology that's making sure that we're the leader in all these technologies like AI, nanotechnology, biotechnology, et cetera. It's a public-private partnership working with venture capitalists like myself to make sure those inventions get out of the lab, get commercialized, and get scale. And that's something that I know how to do and would bring to Washington.
When we come forward in our conversation with Jason Palmer, I want to get his take on what he suggested earlier about what he thinks Joe Biden is doing wrong in foreign affairs, on foreign policy. How would a Palmer presidency be different when it comes to foreign affairs than what we're experiencing right now? Never mind the president's comments yesterday that he expects a ceasefire in the next week in the war between Israel and Hamas. Our guest right now is a Democratic candidate for president of these United States. His name is Jason Palmer. More with him when we come forward on Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley and Democratic presidential candidate Jason Palmer. We're inviting all of them in, and I'm glad he came in to see us today. Let me ask you right quick, watching my time here, how would a Palmer presidency be different on foreign policy than a Biden presidency?
Well, the biggest difference is we need to commit to our values. I chose to be Quaker by religion. That's my choice. And the Quakers have been in favor of peace since the beginning of Quakerism.
Bayard Rustin was a Quaker.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So it's very important that we live by our values. And the reason why so many people around the world are hate America or are angry at America is because we don't live by our values. We should be promoting democracy, human rights, self-determination. We should not be encouraging foreign wars or removing leaders of foreign countries. We should actually be trying to make the world the better place that we know it should be and can be. And so Biden is involved in, I would call it, trying to police the whole world. Think about all the military bases that we have all over the world. We're trying to maintain this police-style leadership everywhere, and the American people don't want that. The American people want us to invest at home and stop meddling in every other country's foreign affairs. So the same thing that the globe wants is what the American people want, actually. Now, I'm not saying that we should go completely isolationist. Let's talk about Gaza. Right now, it's very clear that what's happening is the bombardment of the Palestinians has displaced more than 2 million people. Your last caller did, it was painful listening to what he was saying because it's all true. More than 2 million people displaced, almost 30,000 dead. And we're essentially just writing a blank check to the Netanyahu administration saying, keep up those policies. That's not right. That's not what Americans believe. That's not what the Democratic Party believes. That policy has to stop. We need to stop funding the bombardment of the civilians of Gaza.
You used a phrase earlier that I'm familiar with, and I consider myself in this frame of conscious capitalist. You said conscious capitalism. That's your lane, and that's one of the things you want to bring to your leadership. Tell me more about it in the last 2 minutes.
Sure. So conscious capitalism is probably the most important idea I've encountered in my life. And you know it. It's companies that choose to be purpose-driven. It's business for good, essentially. And I've been investing in companies that, for example, do education in prisons or provide loans to people with no credit score to help them go to college and boot camps. There is a whole movement of people that are building these B corporations, is what they're called. And it doesn't have to just be about making profit for shareholders. It can actually be about putting the customers first, putting your employees first. You can actually structure your company to live up to the values of multiple stakeholders. And this is a really important part of my campaign, is that we can restructure our entire economy with this middle ground between capitalism and socialism. I do also want to mention that today my team and I are actually launching the first presidential AI. So if you go to my website at palmerforpresident.us, you'll be able to ask me any question you want about conscious capitalism, about the new collar economy, and a very pleasing version of me, my AI version, will actually give you all the answers that you need.
Wow, that's pretty innovative.
It is innovative. It's the first time that something like this has happened, and once you see it, you'll realize every single candidate running for president is going to need one of these next time around.
But Jason Palmer's out front.
I'm out in front. Always. I always am innovating a few years earlier.
Yeah, it ain't going to take you 40 years to get there.
No.
His name is Jason Palmer. He is a Democrat, and he is running for president of these United States, trying to force Joe Biden to some debates. His website is palmerforpresident.us, and you can ask his AI anything you want to ask. palmerforpresident.us. How to learn more. I'm going to check it out myself just because I want to see the AI version of you and hear what you sound like, what you look like.
It looks very much like me. It's so similar to me. It is. It's impressive. Sometimes it even says answers better than me.
Yeah, if I can get AI to do my work here 3 hours a day, I'd be a lot happier some days. But I digress on that. Jason, all the best on the campaign trail. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you giving us some time today.
Thanks. I really appreciate it, Tavis.